Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susanna Suisuiki. Coming up, Cyclone Alfred descends on Queensland. Also,
we've got young bright stars in the arts and culture world that are coming through.
Auckland's Pasifika Festival returns, and
we can say how nice we're playing and how unlucky we are, but at the end of the day, this business is about winning and winning rugby in that.
The pressure is on for Drua and Moana to deliver. Tens of thousands of homes and businesses along Australia's eastern coast are under evacuation orders as Cyclone Alfred nears. The tropical cyclone is expected to make landfall on Saturday morning on the Queensland-New South Wales border. Meteorologist Angus Hines has told the ABC the storm is proving difficult to forecast.
Maybe overnight tonight into Saturday morning, or even throughout Saturday morning by the time it does work its way onto the Queensland coast, and that's when we'll see the strongest, most destructive winds and probably the heaviest, most intense rainfall, which can lead to very significant flooding of our rivers as well as just significant flash flooding.
I spoke to a couple of residents on the Gold Coast, and here's what Lawano Mongututia had to say.
Yeah, my wife and I, like I said, we prepared everything, that we tied everything down, and fingers crossed that it won't be as bad as it's predicted, but we're okay.
I also spoke with Oketi Lawrenson and began by asking her about preparations.
Oh, well, there's been a shortage of water in the supermarket, and because they're saying that after the cyclone, the water may not be clean enough to drink. So we've had to just fill bottles and containers full of water for bath, for, toilet areas, for washing areas, and also drinking water for ourselves. So there was a lot of stocking up on just even canned foods and just foods that, we can eat without having to cook, because I think the power will be switched off tonight when just before the cyclone hits. That's what I'm hearing, just so there's no electrocutions or anything like that with possible flooding. But we've had to move a lot of our outdoor furniture inside, just check on that there's nothing outside that can fly around and go through the windows. So just all sorts of things like that. Even across the road, the neighbour had a for sale post up. We woke up this morning and that was face down. So we had to go and move that also in a place where it's not going to be flying around and hitting or going into somebody's window or car. So, there's a lot of preparation. It's pre-cooking our food. So we've had to do that today, just making sure that there's storage areas and plenty of ice to keep the food in our fridges cold once the power turns off. I know some people have gotten generators. Up the road, they've boarded windows with wood boards. So, it's a lot.
Absolutely. And how are you feeling at the moment? You feeling safe? You feeling okay?
Well, I've been in cyclones before in Samoa, and they've usually just brimmed, and, I've been able to sit out in the balcony and just watch the wind and everything being blowing. But this is a little bit different here in the Gold Coast. So there's a lot of anticipation because of the wind speed. So they said it's dropped down from 120 to 100 k's per hour. But that, I don't know, that could easily pick up again and drop. So we feel relatively safe. Last night we had little bits of wind here and there and little bits of gushes of rain, but then it disappears and then it comes back again. So right now the sun is out, although the clouds are grey. So it's not too bad, but we are trying to listen out for sounds of banging. I know there was banging last night when the wind was, and we're just trying to find it so it's not banging that's going to have a fence fly off or something else flying around that could obviously cause damage. But our house is pretty good. We're just keeping a very close eye And also, watching out for family and friends, who are in flood risk areas, and just letting them know about sites they can go into, just to, that the Gold Coast City Council has provided to, so they can watch levels of flooding in certain areas if they're close to the canals or to the water. But we're relatively safe, and the hospital is just 2 minutes up the road. So,
is there a tight-knit Pasifika community on the Gold Coast? And if so, have you been able to check in on them?
There is. Look, we have a really tight-knit community, and they've also reached out and said if you need help. Churches in the Gold Coast, it's predominantly Pasifika. I belong to a church that's mainly Pacific and Māori people, and, they're just constantly checking in on each other, providing, stuff like gas burners and just extra food for those that may need it. It's pretty good here. We're pretty tight-knit, and just I can see the messages going up, all the time, just reassuring each other, that everything's okay, and that just to reach out if they're struggling mentally, because I can see some people are struggling. I think that waiting time can cause a lot of anxiety for a lot of people as well.
For the latest cyclone updates, head over to rnz.co.nz. Auckland's Pasifika Festival is back on the up and up after a difficult few years. After overcoming a number of hurdles, organisers hope the iconic event can remain a fixture in Auckland's central suburbs. Felix Walton has more.
Auckland's Pasifika Festival has faced its fair share of challenges in recent years. The festival was cancelled in 2019 following the Christchurch mosque attacks, then again in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2023, the festival went ahead but took a different tone, held just weeks after storms devastated much of Auckland. At the same time, rumours swirled the event was facing budget cuts, though it managed to avoid the axe. Last year's festival was something of a return to form, and organiser Jep Savali says it's still tracking upwards.
COVID changed everything for everyone, didn't it? And then hard on the heels of that, we had the Auckland anniversary floods, and certainly it changed the landscape in terms of events generally. But in saying that, I think we're just starting to get back onto that growth curve, and we're positively moving upwards and onwards.
Mr Savali, the group manager for major events at Tātaki Auckland Unlimited, says after 5 years the city's event sector has finally recovered from COVID-19.
Right across the industry, we're hearing conversations across our industry peers that we're basically almost back to pre-COVID levels.
In fact, he says the festival is thriving.
We are definitely on a growth curve, and we're seeing improvement in the festival year on year. And so with that, there's more activation. We've got young bright stars in the arts and culture world that are coming through.
Mount Albert MP Helen White says the central suburbs have embraced the annual Pasifika Festival as a part of the community culture.
I think the contribution of the Pacific community in Auckland's huge. They have really contributed to the kind of richness of the culture and basically anchoring us in the Pacific.
Behind the scenes, Jep Savali says organisers have been working to make the festival better.
What we've tried to really focus on this year is really keep our food and craft offering genuine and authentic.
He says authenticity has become an important topic in discussions with the Pasifika Village Charitable Trust, which manages the cultural integrity of the festival.
In our feedback to each other about how we can be better and where we can once again grow this festival, authenticity is really important. Authenticity of food offering, authenticity in terms of the cultural exchange, in terms of the performances.
The chair of the trust, Ena Manuireva, says it's vital the Pasifika Festival preserves and shares authentic practices.
For me, authenticity is to come to Fale Pasifika and to shave the coconut like we do on the island. That's authenticity. Not to use those different machines, electric machines. That's authenticity. For me, that's what we used to do. It's important that uniqueness is being displayed there.
Mr Manuireva, born in Tahiti, says celebrating Pasifika gives him a taste of home.
For me, for us, for the diaspora, I'm talking about Tahiti. We haven't got many people here from Tahiti. In fact, we are the smallest community. For me, when I think Pasifika, I think, home away from home. So that's for me, the Pasifika is my home.
Anna Manuireva says he hopes to share the experience with Aucklanders when the Pasifika Festival opens tomorrow morning at Western Springs Park. It runs until Sunday evening.
Fighting in the Bougainville, Papua New Guinea Civil War officially ended in 1997 with the peace agreement signed in 2001, but many in the region continue to suffer severe trauma. 3 academics from the Australian National University, Sinclair Dinnan, Miranda Forsyth and Dennis Guyai, have been compiling a blog, Post-Conflict Bougainville, and say the region continues to suffer from the crisis. They advise Bougainville to confront these problems with a return to peace building in communities. Don Wiseman spoke with Professor Miranda Forsyth about their work.
In a blog, you, with Dennis Guyai and Sinclair Dinnan, have been looking back at the Bougainville conflict, post-conflict, and what you see are very, very serious social issues that can be sheeted straight back to the crisis itself, and that these are things that really need to be dealt with, and dealt with in a different way to perhaps are being dealt with right now. So how bad is it?
Of course, things are of different levels of severity in different places. And of course, there are parts of Bougainville that are not afflicted with these problems of drug and alcohol abuse and sexual violence and even murder. But it does seem that these are reasonably prevalent across Bougainville. And as you have just identified, they are often linked in really complex ways to the earlier crisis. So we're not saying that that is solely the reason for it, but we definitely see that some of the trauma that was created then has continued, that many of the relationships that were fractured during that time haven't been able to repair. And the post-conflict governance and security arrangements haven't really developed in a way that has been able to create a new vision and a new thriving Bougainville.
You're talking about a need to effectively peace build again.
Yes, exactly. Rather than seeing current day issues such as violence and alcohol and drug abuse as being law and order or solely law and order, then we're saying we need to think about these in the context of ongoing need for peace building. So there does need to be community dialogue, but there's also needs to be attention to building up that social capital, that social cohesion between communities again.
Of course, a lot of these issues that you've mentioned here, they're present right across the country, aren't they?
Yes. Yes, and in fact, one of the things that we are thinking about is that maybe some of the lessons from Bougainville, the way in which peace building was done, in those years after the conflict, are things that really need to be used in other parts of PNG today as well, particularly up in the highlands. Post-conflict, there was a great deal of work done by Peace Foundation Melanesia, which was a grassroots NGO that really spent years training village leaders to be peacemakers. And these kinds of skills were then really called upon and used by communities in order to resolve day-to-day disputes and conflicts. Unfortunately, those skills have started to atrophy over time as there hasn't been that same level of effort put into keeping people's skills up to date and also bringing on and training new peace builders. So we think that a lot of effort could really be put into doing that, particularly maybe as a way of addressing the problems up in the highlands with ongoing intergroup violence.
Let's come back to Bougainville. You'd need a lot of people even in Bougainville, wouldn't you? Because while Bougainville is a small region relative to many other parts of the country, there's still potentially 400,000 people there.
Yes, but there is a great capacity within the Bougainvillean population to step up to perform that role. So we've seen just the way in which leaders step up in Bougainville in order to voluntarily do mediation within communities is really extraordinary, something that I've admired for a long period of time. We see in particular some of the leaders from the crisis, in fact, who are recognizing that they now have a role not as war makers, but as peace builders. So, for example, in the work that I've been doing, in particular in relation to sorcery accusation related violence, I found that there are some former BRA leaders who've been really trying to address the problem of SARV. They have taken it upon themselves to establish safe houses to keep those who are being accused safe while they can engage in the really long process of reconciliation and of trying to enable those who have been accused to be reintegrated back into their communities. So I think that it would require a lot of people to be involved, but we certainly see that there is a willingness within the community to do that kind of work.
One of the organisations you're talking about is the Bougainville Community Peace and Security Task Unit. Now, this is a new organisation, is it?
So that's a proposed part of the new system of governance. And really, you should be speaking with Dennis about that because he's one of the ones who's been designing it and thinking about, what kind of a role could it have? But the idea, again, is to really bring governance in at that grassroots level and to ensure that you have got local leaders who are equipped with skills to be able to deal with social order problems and then can work together with bits of the state as well in order to address them quickly before they get out of hand.
Within that, there's a different approach needed or seen as ideal to policing.
Yes, so the policing approach, we're not saying that you need to have one or the other. We're saying that we need to have both. But if you just have a policing approach that is focused on punishing those who are actually caught committing crimes, then it's really not going to be addressing the underlying drivers of these kind of problems. And also, generally, they come after a crime has been committed, after there's been violence. And really, you want to be able to be doing a lot of proactive work to stop these things from exploding in violence in the first place and to really try to build that community cohesion so that there isn't such a need for that heavy policing. Keep the policing presence there as, if you like, a threat in the background, that if things can't be settled down at the community level, then the police certainly can come in and can ensure that people's lives aren't put at risk.
What about justice?
There's also been a lot of thinking through of how to address justice in a Bougainville context that would bring together both state understandings of justice as well as customary understandings of justice that really build on trying to ensure that relationships are mended and that people are held to account, but they're held to account within their community as well as by the state. So it's really important to think about how can that accountability occur at the same time as allowing traditional reconciliation practices to build back those relationships within communities.
This weekend's round of Super Rugby Pacific matches is critical for both the Fijian Drua and Moana Pasifika. Both have suffered close losses in their respective 3 matches so far and are both lying at the bottom of the competition's points table. Elisa Tora with the story.
Fiji Drua head coach Glenn Jackson says the players understand the importance of winning at home in Lautoka against the Chiefs on Saturday, as they realize that they need to start winning games now. Jackson says the discussions have been around finishing the game well and making full use of their opportunities, something they lacked against the Brumbies, Hurricanes and Waratahs.
Pretty important to win most games. We all know, and I know, we're under no illusion, of course, the public of Fiji want wins. We can say how nice we're playing and how unlucky we are, but at the end of the day, this business is about winning and winning rugby. And our boys understand that. You know, they've been to the playoffs twice out of 3 years, which is still pretty remarkable.
He says the fact that all squad members are performing well when they are given the opportunity to play has presented them with the challenge of picking the best lineup for each of their games.
There's a lot of players who have been in the Drua that we hadn't had a proper look at, so it was important that we put them out on the main stage to see where we're at. And the problem with that is that they've all put their hand up. So now the depth, I think, of our club is extremely strong. So to 100% understand what our strongest team is a good thing that we don't quite know. We're making selections based on the efforts that the boys are putting in.
In North Harbour, Moana head coach Fa'alonga Umanga invited former world heavyweight boxing title contender Fa'amuina To'aletai David Tua to help psych the players for Saturday night's clash against the Hurricanes.
We had Fa'amuina David Tua this week, and just speaking to the players around, you know, if I do my job, my brother next to me does his job, the guy on the other side does his job, and the guy at the back do their jobs. You know, and that's something that we, you know, in terms of our review the day before, that's what we talked about. I think for the players, it's just realising that don't try and overplay our hand. You know, we enjoy what we do, but we've got to make sure that we're doing it for us.
Captain Adi Saver, who last weekend said they must also start winning their games, says he is excited to face his former Hurricanes team.
It's come to that point this weekend where I get to run out against, you know, some of the brothers and a team that has done so much for me and my family and that I've served for many years. So it's going to be special. Like for me, you know, like around my preparation, it's the same. Like, you know, I've got to nail things each day for me to be able to perform on game day. Canes being a past team, you know, that's something that, you know, I want to go out there on Saturday and try and perform to the best.
Saber says he was looking forward to getting their fans packing the stadium again for the match.
Yeah, you know, it's a great crowd, and honestly, man, just a massive shout out to, you know, our fans. Like running out here, it's something I've never experienced, finishing a huddle after we've scored points and the crowd singing and cheering and getting in behind. It's kind of the first time I felt that in New Zealand at home. So, man, just a shout out to all our Moana fans. Get down, Albany, North Harbour Stadium, let's go.
Drua will meet the Chiefs at 3:35 p.m. Fiji time on Saturday, while Moana Pasifika hosts the Hurricanes at 7:05 p.m. New Zealand time the same evening. Other matches in round 4 sees the Blues against the Brumbies, Waratahs taking on the Force, and Crusaders meeting the Reds on Sunday afternoon. In women's Super W competition, the Fijian and Drua will be trying to win their second game when they meet the Reds in Lautoka on Saturday, following their first round victory over the defending champions, the Waratahs, last weekend.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For more episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, so far, soifua.